Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Glendale Redevelopment Agency meeting of March 27, 2007. May we have a roll call for the agency, please?
Agency members Manukian.
Here.
Najarian.
Here.
Quintero.
Here.
Weaver.
Here.
Chairman Yousefian.
Here. May we have your report, please?
The agenda for the March 27, 2007 regular meeting of the Glendale Redevelopment Agency was posted on Thursday, March 22, 2007 on the bulletin board outside City Hall.
What's next, please?
Approval of minutes.
Do we have a motion to approve the minutes as...
So moved.
With an abstention?
I have to abstain as well.
Okay, the minutes will stay as is with 2 abstentions. What's next, please?
At 5 is oral communications. Discussion is limited to items not a part of this agenda. Each speaker is allowed 5 minutes. Members of the Redevelopment Agency may question or respond to the speaker, but there will be no debate or decision. The matter may be referred to staff through the Executive Director for investigation and report.
Okay. Before I go to the oral communication, gentlemen in the back of the room, could you please come? There are seats out in here, so we're not blocking the fire exit, and allow handicapped people to come in without any obstruction. Thank you very much. Aram Kazazian. Your name for the record, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Aram Kazazian. Some of you are aware, I guess, I have attended almost all the candidate forums so far. One thing has bothered me. Some of the questions were asked and answered. I believe some of them were not correct answers to them. I'll give one example. Mr. Mayor Weaver, you answered one question regarding what can we do about traffic. You said you cannot widen the streets, unfortunately, and one way to do it is have it one-way street, Brandon Central. That won't work in this city. I don't think that's functionable. Brandon is a big problem with it. And instead of widening them, you will have narrowed some of the streets down. The reason we've done that, in fact, the architect for the Americana mentioned that we want to narrow the streets down to make the traffic even go slower, so you can look at the scenery when you're driving back. We narrowed Brand Boulevard down right by the Americana. We took the parking strip out, and we are deeding it to the Americana, which is wrong. That city street, there should have been all that parking strip should have been widened. In fact, should have been more widened. I did a very, very strong schematic drawings. I brought it to this council, and all the traffic pattern by the Americana to show how to solve the Brand Boulevard, Colorado, and Central traffic. And that was ignored. Only Mr. Quintero's insistence was where Colorado was widened, portion of it by going westbound to Central right there was widened. That's the only portion because Mr. Quintero insisted at the time. But Brand, I said the only way to solve the problem is to widen Brand Boulevard by extra lane in there to have the traffic merge below Brand so to relieve the traffic, but that was ignored. Same thing we did on Central Avenue northbound, where we're narrowing Central down in front of Embassy Suite, and we're deeding the property over to the Embassy, which is another problem we're causing. And then then we come to the new project's going to go on North Central by Doran. That is a disaster. That traffic is not going to work. You need extra lanes from westbound Doran. If you don't provide the extra lanes, that will be a disaster for life. You only have one lane turning right, one going straight, one going to the left. It will not function because once you make the turn, the traffic bottlenecks to go in the freeway, you cannot even turn a right turn over there. That right now it's a disaster. In the future, it's going to be even worse. Unfortunately, I think we have $4 million money from Americana coming in. We should use that money to solve the problem, one of the intersections or 2 intersections, buy some land and take care of that problem. If we don't do it now, we're never going to be able to do it. I know nobody wants to hear this, but that's what it is. So I urge that you take a look at some of the streets, get the public input. I did very good drawings for you. I came over here over and over again But I know nobody wants to listen. You just laugh at the people and you don't listen, which is not correct. And let's solve these traffic problems right now before we go any further. Thank you.
Thank you. That was the last oral communication. What's next, please?
At 6A is a public hearing, Director of Development Services regarding Armenian Society of Los Angeles ASLA Development Project 117 South Louise Street. At 6A1 is a resolution approving final environmental study mitigated negative declaration. At 6A2 is a motion approving Stage 2 final design review subject to agency conditions and comments. At 6A3 is motion approving parking exception for 256 spaces.
Okay. I like to deal with this thing one thing at a time, so I would like to have the staff start with the EIR first, and then after we're done with the EIR, then we go to the design, and then after we're done with the design, then we go to the parking exception. I don't want to mix them all because the EIR is a pretty hefty document, so there may be questions on that. So with that, Mr.
Okay.
Robert.
We'll take them up one at a time, and to start,
It's not an EIR.
So negative.
he means the environmental review.
Environmental review.
The
Yeah.
environmental review.
And I'm assuming what you're meaning is that you want staff to provide you with a separate report on that item. Do you want the public then to speak on that and then try to go segment it that way?
No, when it comes to the votes, that's how I'm going to take it, but the staff can
I
get
think,
the
I think the
report.
question is how do you want to work in the oral comments, public comments?
Right.
Oh, after the staff is done with their reports.
Okay, so give the
So deal with the resolution of approving the final environmental. Give me a report on that, and then after that is finished, then go to the stage 2, and then after you're done, go to the parking exceptions, and then I'll take comments in,
And then you come back and act on
and
the
then
three
I'll come
items.
back and vote on them one at a time.
Okay. All right, to Phil Lanzafame. Phil?
Mr. Chairman, members of the agency, the item before you today is really the implementation of an agreement the agency entered into with the Armenian Society of Los Angeles back in May of 2003. We exchanged properties as part of an acquisition for property within the Americana brand project. The Armenian Society is a group that has been in Glendale for more than 25 years. They provide community services in different events in Armenian culture, and it is a membership-type group. The items before you, you have seen this design once before. It was last year as part of Stage 1. The comments that were given have been incorporated into the final design, which is here for your consideration, along with the environmental document, which is a mitigated negative declaration. As part of the agreement that the agency entered into, we would be providing parking for this project in the marketplace garage. That requires a parking exception from the redevelopment agency, and that's why it is listed here as the third item for you to hear. Staff is worked with the Armenian Society of Los Angeles to bring these items to you for consideration. At this time, we are recommending approval of all. But before we get to that vote, we will do a presentation on the individual items as they're listed here. For that, I'll introduce Deputy Director of Development Services, Dave Ahern.
There you go.
Agency Chairman Yosefi and members of the agency, the matter before the agency today is consideration of land use entitlements for the Armenian Society of Los Angeles, or ASLA, project as it's commonly referred to, which is a multi-purpose community center for this nonprofit agency. You previously saw this project on May 9th of 2006 for design review. Stage 1 design review was approved. The project is located at 117 South Louise Street between Harvard and Broadway, within the Maryland district of the Downtown Specific Plan. The neighborhood setting for the project includes a mix of commercial and institutional uses such as churches, schools, Chamber of Commerce, city parking structure, and multifamily uses. The project site itself is a 15,000 square foot lot currently improved as a surface parking lot. The proposed project includes a 3-story building where 4 stories are allowed under the DSP. The building height proposed is 48 feet 6 inches. where 65 feet is allowed. The floor area for the proposed project is 27,000 square feet, just under that, approximate, and an FAR of 1.64, where an FAR of 2.50 is allowed. The front setback is 11 feet 2 inches, where a 6-foot setback is required. In addition, the main entry is set back an additional 11 feet. The rear setback of the building is 3.5 feet from the property line. Uses, just to describe the project a little more, the building elevation is on the board. It's a 3-story building, and the uses are divided among the 3 floors. On the first floor, there is a cafeteria, an office, a main lobby, and 14 surface parking spaces accessed through the alley at the rear of the project. The second floor has a multi-purpose room, a kitchen, support area, and office area for lease. The third floor has a kitchen, office area, classrooms, and a library meeting room. That's a fair description of the project. You've asked us to take these actions one at a time, so we'll start with the environmental. An initial study was completed for the project, and at that time it was determined that a negative declaration should be prepared and circulated to analyze the potential environmental impacts of the project. On March 2nd, 2007, a notice of intent, along with an initial study describing the project and analyzing potential environmental impacts, was made available for public comment. The public comment is a 20-day period, and that 20-day period concluded on March 22nd. The agency did not receive any comments from the public formally during that 20-day period. The mitigated neg deck, or MND, that was circulated at the time could not reflect that no comments were received, and so the MND has been modified to now reflect that. I've circulated an errata sheet that shows those changes. Effectively, there are 2 changes. The first change in the errata sheet is on page 1, last paragraph, and the changes are very minor text changes. It used to say the multi-purpose room would be used. It now says typical use of the multi-purpose room would be during weekdays and weekend evenings. It did not previously state weekend evenings, although that was certainly their intent. That's the first change. The second change is page 6. That is the page that was inserted to reflect the process that was gone through and also reflect that no comments were received. Agency staff did receive 1 call from the public during the comment period. That call was returned 3 times. No contact was made. However, representatives from the Presbyterian Church adjacent to the proposed project site did meet with staff yesterday afternoon and expressed concerns regarding parking issues, traffic issues, and staff attempted to address their concerns at that time. I'm certain that those representatives are here today to further share their concerns with the agency members. The environmental document evaluated potential impacts in all areas and proposed mitigation as follows. Primarily, the impacts were short-term and construction-related. One area of impact was biological resources, and the mitigation is to provide protection for disturbances to nesting birds who have their habitat in that area. Second area, very common, cultural resources. During the course of excavation and construction, if they unearth any cultural resources, there's a mitigation measure for construction to be halted and archaeological professionals to be brought in to examine it. Geology and soils was an area for mitigation, and that's mitigated through very standard building conditions, seismic conditions that are really more code-related than anything else. Noise mitigation for vibration during construction, again, a construction-related activity, is addressed in the environmental. Utilities and service systems was found to be less than significant, although there's very significant mitigation measures that are not so much a part of the environmental document as they are code required for every project to go through to prevent storm water runoff. And so all of that mitigation is proposed. One mitigation measure that's been revised and it's reflected in the proposed resolution is regarding impacts to fire services. The proposed mitigation was to fund half of an inspection position, and that's been revised to address that through the city budget process, and also to address emergency medical response through that budgetary process as well. A resolution certifying and adopting the MND is attached in your packet for your consideration, along with a mitigation monitoring program that staff will monitor during the course of the project if this is approved. Mr. Chairman, would you like me to stop at this point and take comment?
Yeah,
or do you want me to continue?
I have a question actually on one of the mitigation measures dealing with noise. I mean, is there? It's on page 6 actually. It's the abbreviated persons. As I read this thing, is there any? Have you? I mean, you deal with the vibration and so on and so forth. Is there a mitigation there since this workplace is next to a place of worship? Do we have some kind of mitigation in here? So on Sundays, there will be no work. So this way, or is this automatically?
It's currently not allowed, Mr. Chairman.
Currently
Work on
not
Sunday.
allowed.
Currently not allowed.
Okay.
Not as a mitigation measure, but just as a matter of code.
Okay. Because it's in the CBD zone, that's why I was asking. Or it's a new.
That's
I mean,
a
it's a
citywide
commercial
standard.
zone. Oh, it's a city standard. We do it, Mr. Lansing.
Mr. Chairman, just to note that a request could be made to work on a Sunday. I believe it's the Director of Public Works that would make that determination in consultation with the city manager and other departments, responsible departments. So it could be made. The request could be made.
Okay, well, for myself is, unless there's an emergency, I would like that not to happen. Last thing you need is people attending worship and people are jackhammering next door.
I think it's fair to say in general it's not permitted, but under special circumstances it could be permitted. In this case, given the location of the Presbyterian Church, it's not likely to be permitted, even if requested.
Okay. Any other questions on the EIR?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Mr. Ahern, you talked about the biological resources and the nesting birds. Are there any trees currently on that property?
Agency Member Najarian, there are not any trees on it, but the environmental looks at the surrounding area as well. Okay. And so we don't have any identified nesting birds in that area, but it's the potential. That
theoretically.
it's a very expansive review, and so.
Okay, I didn't think so, but I wanted to make sure I was looking at the rights.
Okay, any
you.
questions on the environmental? Okay, and the errata sheet will be attached to the neg deck? Ms. Van Meiden?
That's correct. It will be, Mr. Chair, members of the agency will be incorporated into the final negative declaration.
Okay. I guess we're done with the neg deck. Next.
Mr. Chairman, did you want the parking exception or the design review next? Design review. Okay. The agency, Mr. Chairman, last reviewed this project in May of 2006. At that time, the agency granted a Stage 2 design review approval for the project. The agency also gave direction with that approval for the architect and project team to make an effort to increase the interest in the north and south elevations of the building and to simplify the Louise elevation of the building. The architect has refined the plans in terms of that direction. On the front elevation at the third level, he's removed the balustrades on the east and west wing of the building. He has also set back the building from the north and south property lines 1.5 feet, and he's added at the first level. At the second and third level, the building is set back 3 feet from the north and south property lines. The architect has also added
a total of 3 feet or 3 feet each floor?
I'm sorry?
Is it, you said it's set back 3 feet at the second and third level?
That's correct.
Is it set back 3 feet at each level or a total of 3 feet for both levels?
3 feet at each level.
3 feet on each.
The architect has also added some decorative elements, cornices, and projections to the north and south elevations to add architectural interest. It's worth noting that at the north and south elevations, the building meets existing buildings from the Presbyterian Church and from the auto body shop Car Crafters at the north. The project was reviewed by staff, and the project meets the requirements of the downtown specific plan, with one exception. The open space requirement needs to provide 5% public open space. This project is roughly 163 feet short of that public open space requirement. The applicant's been made aware of that, and the applicant has agreed to convert a portion of the front setback landscape area into hardscape area and add bench seating or low walls with bench seating on top, which will satisfy that public open space requirement.
Could you explain that?
Sure. At the front
it needs to increase the landscaping part of it, or it needs to increase the hardscape part of it?
It's an increase to the hardscape, and that meets the requirement for the public open space.
So he needs to make the entrance a little bit wider?
Right, the hardscape, not the building entrance, just the hardscape.
Right, in the front, in the front setback.
Exactly, and then add some seating. And he'll do that through either a low wall with a bench seat on it or adding benching.
What if we don't want that? I mean, that's a street. I don't know if I like to have benches out there. I mean, at night you're going to have people.
Seems like it's going to hurt it to put hardscape out there.
Mm-hmm. And also you're going to have, I don't want to have a place that people at night homeless sleep. I mean, that's not, I can understand it on Brand and Central, which is a wide street and there's a lot of traffic moving. You put benches there to do what?
Well, for me, it's the exact opposite. I'd like to have a place where the participants at the Armenian Society can sit outside. It faces the east, so in the afternoon it's going to be a very comfortable place, or even if children are going to be picked up, there's a place for them to sit. I'd like to have the homeless issue, whatever. I mean, never mind that. I think there should be a place that people can sort of congregate outside. So I'm very comfortable with how we go about doing it. I don't know. It's up to the architect, but both for the seniors that attend the society and also for young people that may be waiting to be picked up.
Mr. Chairman, if it's the agency's direction, staff can eliminate that condition and find a substitute condition to satisfy this public open space requirement.
Mr. Arbor?
Well, I just wanted to point out that that was an idea on how to satisfy the 10% open space requirement. There may be other ways to do it, but that seemed to be a fairly simple way to accomplish that one so that you wouldn't have to grant a variance or an exception. There may be other ways to do it, but who knows what the implications may be on the building design.
Yeah, but this is a pipeline project. This was approved under the CBD before we approved the downtown specific plan. So City Attorney, which rule do we follow in here, the CBD rule or the new rule that we just passed?
Mr. Chair, members of the agency, it doesn't have final approval. That was only the conceptual approval. It's still subject, if there is a revision in the zoning in the interim period, which there was, and so we have new requirements for purposes of this design, it would be subject to those new requirements, and therefore the projects that has been presented to you for your consideration incorporates those comments to show conformance with the DSP requirements for open space.
Mr. Mnuchin?
I don't know, for me, decreasing green space and adding hardscapes with benches seems counterintuitive in terms of adding public open space.
Mr. Weaver?
Well, I like the balance in the landscaping on both sides and the potential with planting to have something come up and kind of break the mass of the building on the first floor. So if you're going to put hardscape in, you're eliminating that opportunity.
Mr. Najarian?
From a practical matter, and although I'm clearly on the record opposed to cigarette smoking, and I understand that cigarette smoking would be prohibited in this building, and we've all experienced it because they can't smoke inside. It's usually a congregation of folks
Go on the balcony.
outside who smoke. So my only point would be that if there's going to be any accommodations made, it be kept the reality in mind that people will be exiting the building and mulling around the exterior, usually having a cigarette or two, and that if...
You want to make it more comfortable for them to smoke more?
Well, the reality is, by taking away the benches, I don't think that's going to stop them from smoking. But I don't want them smoking in the building. I don't want them to say, well, we can't go outside. There's no place to sit. So I would prefer that, we're talking about benches and a low wall. I'm not opposed to having that. I'd like to hear from the architect and see if that would in any way compromise the design. But I think it wouldn't be bad to have some sort of accommodations in the front there.
But do you have any preference as far as increasing the hardscape or keeping the hardscape as is?
Well, by putting a bench, I think we're, by essence, increasing the hardscaping.
Well, you could actually increase the height of the retaining wall in here, and it will act as a sitting area.
I don't have a problem with that.
If I'm reading it right, the entranceway is about 11 and a half feet by 10, 20, 30, 40 feet.
Yeah, that's a pretty wide.
Again, that's a pretty good size area to stand inside.
But the issue is that by putting this seating, it qualifies as the DSP requirement for the public open space.
Mr. Starboard?
I think a question is, what is the agency's options relative to the 10% requirement? Can they say, no, we like the design as it is, forget about the conflict with the 10%? Do they have to adhere to the 10%, so they're looking at design options? Jillian, can you help us?
I'll help you to the extent that I can, but I will also look to the planning director for that purpose as well, in that these are new standards and we have a new open space requirement. The flexibility in that, I would direct that question for that purpose to
Your name for
Hassan Agani.
Hassan Haghani, Acting Director of Planning. The 5% of the open space requirement it's a standard that needs to be accessible to the public, and that is really the requirement that's contingent on it. It does not need to be hardscape. By saying it's accessible to the public, it does not mean that it has to be paved. If there is, for example, a bench put on the grass facing the sidewalk, so long as people can actually have access to it and it's not fenced off, it can still meet the publicly accessible outdoor space.
Well, the grass is public accessible. You can walk on the grass.
You can walk on the grass. That's accessible to the public. However, the purpose of this...
1,600 square feet of grass area.
That is correct.
So as I read the staff report, I couldn't understand that. I mean, there's no walls, there's no fences in front of it, so it is accessible to the public. And I don't understand. We like to have people bringing in buildings that are more green in the front, and then on the other hand, we're saying, no, just go ahead and pave it. And I didn't get it. I mean, you can walk on this thing. It's flat.
The intent of the Downtown Specific Plan was not necessarily to pave it, but it is to be accessible. And as I mentioned, you could maintain the grass and put a bench that faces the sidewalk, so long as it is not fenced off. It still would meet the requirement without paving it.
My question is,
yes,
accessible,
correct,
and having a bench to sit on is two different things.
Right.
It's accessible. So where do you have a specific plan that says you have to have a bench?
there are actually guidelines and standards written in the portion that defines what that particular 5% needs to be, the different ways that the particular 5% needs to be designed, and one of them, and Alan is just looking for that section.
One of them is benches. Not necessarily.
Seating needs to be provided.
There's a standard that says seating is to be provided through the use of of portable or fixed site furniture on edge along the planted areas or along the fountains. So in other words, if you have planted area along the edges of the planted area, you need to provide seating. Again, this was to address the shortage of outdoor space in the downtown area within the urban areas. This would provide some relief, and part of it was, as Councilman Najarian mentioned earlier, because we do know that there are establishments that do need outdoor smoking areas, and this would be one way to deal with that. And we have standards for keeping those areas clean.
Yeah, but on one side, we have signs all over the city saying no smoking within 20 feet of the building. And then it's contrary to what we're preaching. I don't understand that. I just don't get the concept, Mr. Starber.
Taking the smoking issue out, I think the intent is that if it's going to be public space, it's a place where you can go and sit, enjoy the green. Just walking on the grass isn't considered, something the public would enjoy, but being able to sit down at a quiet moment, whether you're using the building or you're not using the building, you can sit and rest, as we see happens down at Whole Foods, for example. They have sitting areas in the store that I'm sure a lot of people who don't even go into the store sit there and enjoy the nice little green spaces that they've created. So that's probably how we get to the point of looking at benches as a way of saying the green space becomes public when you can do something with it besides just walk on it. Now, if it were a formal garden open to the public, that might be very different. But in this case, with a setback, the ability to use a couple of benches so the public can enjoy a quiet, pretty green space is probably what's intended.
That's correct.
Irrespective of the smoking issue.
Once again, my feeling is, as a matter of fact, there's going to be a cafe at ground level, I believe. It'll be serving food from time to time. Cafeteria, etc. And my feeling is to have an outdoor space that members of the society can enjoy, once again, perhaps seniors or even younger people, to have some outside space that happens to face east, so in the summer the sun is going to be a wonderful place to sit. That's a good idea. How it's done is up to the architect. He'll come up with a plan that I'm sure will work out best, but that's a good idea. There's nothing wrong with that concept.
Oh, you can actually increase the height of this thing in here, and there will become a bench.
Some benches.
Yeah. So you could actually raise these things up a little bit, and put a cap on it, and that will become a bench. You could sit on there.
I think that's what was suggested as an idea to meet that need.
Okay. All right. Last item.
Mr. Chairman, the last item is the parking exception. The code-required parking for the project cannot be accommodated on the project site.
What's the code requirement? I know what it is, but I'm asking you so the public who's watching know. 270, I know.
It's 270 spaces. A parking analysis was done on the project based on the floor plan submitted to staff. Staff from traffic, planning, and the agency reviewed the plans and determined that it was a 270 space code requirement. The project can meet the code required parking by providing, and proposes to meet the code required parking by providing 14 on-site spaces and 256 spaces in the adjacent marketplace parking garage per the agency's MOU for the project. The Traffic and Transportation Department has verified that the marketplace garage can accommodate this parking demand for the proposed project. A parking study was done for the project. The parking study determined that a parking demand during peak hours for the project was 246 spaces, 24 spaces less than the code requirement. Nonetheless, the project proposes to meet the 270 space requirement in the manner I just described. Staff is in support of that, and a motion approving the proposed parking exception has been prepared for the agency's consideration and is attached to your report.
Mr. Chairman.
Any questions on that?
Mr. Chairman, just to add to that, the spaces, your parking exception would be to meet the required parking with space in the Marketplace garage. Those would not be exclusive spaces, they would not be reserved, and the Armenian Society of Los Angeles would have access to those, same as any other public person wanting to use that. Now, there is a provision in the MOU that says they would be given the same privileges as other nonprofit organizations. The only agreement that we have is with the Presbyterian Church. They have a validation for Sunday morning, or for Sundays. I think it's an hour and a half. The first hour and a half is validated. So they would be eligible for that same validation on Sunday. Otherwise, they would pay the parking rate, the posted parking rate, same as any other person using the garage.
Okay. Any questions on that? Ms. Van Meiden.
Mr. Chair, members of the agency, before you open the public hearing, I would recommend that, given the number of people in the audience today and the fact that we are considering the certification of a mitigated negative declaration, to the extent that there may be comments that are directed specifically towards the adequacy of the environmental review, I would suggest that you request the speakers indicate whether or not their questions or concerns are directed towards the environmental review and its adequacy, as opposed to just the parking exception by itself or the design. In the event there are a large number of comments that are received concerning the adequacy, there may be a need for a recess for purposes of consulting with our consultants that are here and returning in order to have staff respond to comments and place those comments on the record.
Okay. I'm going to read a couple of names. First of all, I'm going to open the hearing. Number two, I'm going to read a couple of names because I want to make sure that these are the consultants. Peter F. Harris, are you a consultant?
I'm an attorney.
For?
On behalf of Glendale Presbyterian.
Okay. Is there a consultant in here who worked on the environmental from Impact Sciences? And your name is?
My name is Lucy Braza.
Have you filled a card? Okay, so you're here just in case we need you. All right. And Craig Hall, is he a consultant also?
No, I'm pastor at
Okay.
Glendale Press.
Okay, so it's Glendale Place. Okay, so the only consultant is Armik Nazarian? Pardon? Liz. Okay.
You did not fill out a
Okay. Could you guys fill a card, because you may need to address some of the issues with the environmental as the people come forward and speak. Okay. Now, I'm going to go through and call them out, and
I'll do the environmental questions first.
yeah. Steve Beebe.
Environmental.
So it's environmental, design, or
Right.
or all.
Please state your name and let me know whether your comments are about environmental, or if there's a part about environmental, please address that first and then everything else later.
Okay.
Your name for the record. 5 minutes, please.
My name is Steve Beebe, speaking about environmental review.
Okay.
Last year, good afternoon, everyone. Last year, Mr. Starbird and the Glendale Redevelopment Agency arranged a series of meetings between the ASLA and Glendale Presbyterian Church representatives. And also in attendance at one of those meetings were Councilman Manukian and Yusefian. We discussed the concerns about the project and its possible impacts on the neighborhood. And during those meetings, a number of understandings were reached, which include it was acknowledged that GPC was not notified by the city about the availability of the subject land prior to its being given to the ASLA. We were assured that nearly all of the uses of the new facility would be by members of the ASLA. We were assured that the activities held in the new facility would be predominantly cultural and educational. For example, music, dance, art, and language classes, plays, concerts, and so on. And we were assured that the facility would not become a banquet hall, which is a major concern for people all over the city. They would be having activities such as Mother's Day luncheons, occasional seniors banquets, and those would be typical of the non-educational uses. We are very pleased that the ASLA has stated in the intended use section of their recently released negative declaration that the facility will be used only on weekdays. This relieves concerns that many have had regarding the possibility of uses of the new facility, that the nature of which could conflict with long-established programs at GPC and activities there.
Which section do you refer to? Which section is that in the negative?
I'm sorry, I don't have a copy of it. It's in the intended use, right at the beginning of the document. I think it's at the bottom of the page.
Attachment B is the ASLA events.
It's not the events. It's that comes at the end of the document. This is right at the beginning of the document.
I believe he's referring to page 1, number 8.
They will not use it on the weekend? Exhibit 1 of that.
If I could
No,
note for
it's
the,
page
for the
1 of
agency.
the mitigated negative declaration.
Okay, page 1.
The paragraph, the revised, but it's in your packet, page 1. It should be right after right after that program. One more page, Mr. Yusefian.
Okay.
Should be down at the bottom, page 8.
So next to the last line,
paragraph.
I was given a copy of the report and I can read it. Says this is page 1 of the report. Says the multipurpose room would be used during weekday evenings only, and events would end no later than 10 p.m. We're also encouraged that in the last communication, and we have been communicating on an ongoing basis with the redevelopment agency through Alex Hamilton, the former project manager for the project. He indicated to us that the ASLA has decided not to pursue an ABC license. In yesterday's meeting with the representatives of the GRA, we were assured that parking and traffic concerns related to this project have been carefully considered and addressed based on the information provided them by the ASLA, and that the city will continue to work with all parties towards resolution of any issues that may arise in the future. We are, however, still concerned about a number of apparent inconsistencies in the declaration. The concerns include the ASLA's plan to lease out office spaces, the inclusion of a large wine storage room, the fact that the frequency of, for the majority of activities, including banquet use, are defined only as varies. That's as stated in attachment C of the declaration. We feel that as a part of the acceptance of the report, the city should require more well-defined information about those activities, their nature and frequency, especially since in this section the SLA has a number of activities indicated as possible weekend events, which is in conflict with their statement at the beginning of the report. And just to add on to this, the idea of the public smoking area in front of the building is, I don't think that's in keeping with the concept of compatibility that the Design Review Board always takes into account. Perhaps a smoking area could be established on the north side of the building as a punch-in to the building so that it wouldn't be out on the street where it's going to affect neighboring properties. Thank you very much.
Thank you. David Fortune. Your name for the record, and your comments are they environmental?
Well, environmental and traffic.
Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon, agency members, staff. My name is David A. Fortune, resident and businessman in the city. To follow through on the previous speaker, I did notice when I made a study of the on the last paragraph on page 1, which was corrected by the errata and was certainly in conflict with page 6 of attachment A, where there was a conflict between the use on weekdays and no use on weekdays. Now, that has been clarified by the errata, but the reason for my concern there is that in the past couple of years, we've been exposed to at least a word that I haven't heard too often, and that's called morphing. And we've been subject to projects, restaurants being proposed and approved, and then morphing into banquet halls. And my concern is that this also, as the previous speaker concerned, that this would be a banquet hall would be, I think, contrary to many people I've spoken to, and I'm sure to many members of the ASLA. I don't think they would want this ever to be a banquet hall. So that is a concern that I have. Another concern that I have is when I was looking at the traffic study, and let me find that's attachment C here. I note that, and this tends more to the economic aspects of the city. I understand we're in a little problem with funding and treasury. We are losing auto dealers 320 spaces, which I presume are being leased and bringing revenue into the city. I'm not quite sure what the arrangement is with the ASLA as far as how they are going to pay the city, whether there is any financial arrangement with the ASLA. But we are losing funds, and are we going to replace these funds? Is this a wash, or is the city paying for this? The other thing, and I think this brings the study into some question, particularly with the weekday events, I note that on the proposed weekday events, on 7 to 11 on Sundays, the ASLA is put down for 168 parking spaces, and that doesn't seem to be very true to me. So I think the traffic study needs to be restudied, because certainly on Sunday evening, if there's an event, I think they're going to take more than 168 spaces. So the other thing I noted here is that just a comment, apparently when this negotiation was made with the ASLA, so many spaces were given to them, 200 or 300 spaces. This is prior, I think, to the development of the project, and if those spaces had not been available, I wonder if they might not have had to build a smaller project and build some parking, maybe underground parking. So these are all concerns that I have. So I hope you would address this. I think that the traffic should be restudied, and in the light of the new development on the weekend events in the ASLA. Thank you very much.
That's it. Is there any clarification as far as the parking that we are losing as far as the auto dealers? Could you explain the situation on that?
As you know, for auto construct the dealership facility.
So they're not paying anything to us?
When the auto dealers use the city parking garages, they do not pay. That they are limited to 12 months usage with a 3-month extension if it's necessary. It's only for dealers that are building new facilities, and there's no cost to the auto dealer and no revenue to the agency.
And would this exception cut into those parking spaces?
It would not. There's adequate capacity. With currently, it was examined at, I think, estimating auto dealer use at 300 parking spaces. They use significantly less than that now, and they'll use even less in the future. So there's no impact in terms of
So
that.
it would allow other auto dealers to modernize and still park
Absolutely.
their vehicles there,
Absolutely.
and ASLA coexist at the same time. Mr. Lansford.
Mr. Chairman, I want to double check. The table B at the end of your parking study shows what the uses would be with the Armenian Society. It shows some vacant spaces at the different time periods, and that is what would be available. It is the last page. I'm sorry, we should have tabbed them.
You know, we should have these things numbered next time. I mean, we've been asking this for several times, but okay. Could you tell me where it is?
It is. All I can tell you is
Which-
the last page of the parking study.
Okay, it says Table 5, Shared Parking Summary.
Follows the EIR by Overland Consultants.
Right.
Actually, if you continue.
Oh, that's not even that.
No, that's the shared.
So you can even find it.
Going a little bit farther.
The analysis that we go through in an right there, the next page.
Okay.
That's what shows the various parking uses that would be using the marketplace garage,
Well, yeah.
including existing visitors and monthlies, and then there's a number of vacant spaces which would be available for auto dealer use. We assume in this, perhaps Tom Mitchell can correct me if I'm wrong, but we assume that the improvements to the Brand Boulevard of Cars would be for the most part complete, and they would not, as Mr. Ahern said, need that kind of capacity that they have today.
Okay. But it does have a certain amount of capacity just in case.
It has some just in case.
Okay.
Mechanically, how will it work with society members if they're coming to a function on a Saturday night or whenever? How would it work at the parking structure itself? How would they go about parking and
You would just enter the parking garage just like you were using any use in the area. Our agreement calls for access from the garage to the alley so that you could enter the back of.
So I meant the actual going in, getting
they
the.
would just take a ticket. There would be no validation on a Saturday night. That would be reserved for Sunday, similar to the other nonprofit uses. So they would just use the parking garage just like anybody else.
So they would have to pay.
That is correct. Mr. Chairman, I would note, though, in the mobility study plan that we have been looking at, one of the recommendations is to implement a 90-minute free parking for anybody in any of the garages. So if you were to implement that policy, somebody going to this facility would enter the structure, they would have the first 90 minutes free. Again, that is if you implement that recommendation of the mobility plan.
And that's for anyone.
That is for anyone.
Thank you. Don Ferris? Your name for a record, and let me know if this is EIR related or anything else.
Don Ferris, a member of Glendale Presbyterian Church, member of the community all my life. I'm going to be speaking just particularly about parking.
Okay. Thank you.
The parking arrangement, well, first concern, the cafe. The cafe is something new for us in the design. It's a wonderful idea. I welcome the cafe next to us. It'd be great to have a cup of coffee and a great baked good. The Armenian community is astoundingly good at what they do in the baking community. But I'm concerned about what is the issue. If that was a cafe going in there, what is the parking arrangement that you typically would do with a cafe? Is there any distinguishing change in the use for the ASLA building? Supposedly they're a nonprofit. Does that mean they're going to charge nothing at cost? Is it part of their intention to be a cafe? That's something that is a concern to me, because that means people will come in and they'll be gathering. That means they may drive, they may walk, but they'll be intentionally coming down to get together, which is a great idea. I look forward to that if that's what intends. I just wonder what the council or the redevelopment agency thinks about that. Number two,
about the parking issue, right?
Yes, that has to do with the parking.
Okay.
Well, sorry, I guess that has to do with parking near our area. Let's see, the parking facility, 256 spaces. You've chosen to give 250 spaces to accommodate an organization to come in and build a beautiful building right there next to us, actually right on top of us. And my challenge is that you have a great family cultural organization that is built around gatherings and events, teaching, both culturally and aesthetics, and yet we also do the same thing throughout the week. I want to remind you that the church is not just a Sunday activity; it's an active concern all week, morning till evening. And if you understand that, then each of us will be trying to gather into that one area, and it's going to impact us, not only on their parking, but ours as well. So the 250, it was an accommodation, a gift, in order for them to put their building right on that particular site. And if that's good for you as a city councilman to decide that, then we'll work around it. Number three, I'd like to encourage the city council now and the future city council of the new people coming in to consider going beyond the norms for parking as you address the city issues in the future. We seem to be battling all for the same space. All the redevelopment agency is doing a wonderful job in new hotels, new development, new buildings, new organizations all over the city, particularly downtown. But we need to, I would like to have the city council kind of redirect their input toward people that come into the downtown, that live in the downtown, that worship in the downtown, that have businesses in the downtown. And if you could do that, that would be a significant change in attitude that reflects the development of our city. Thanks.
Thank you. Once again, I think the answer to the gentleman was given already earlier. If there are people going to the cafe, they would have to park in the parking structure. They would get a ticket. They go to the cafe and they eat or drink or sit there and be merry. And when they're done, they go back. They're going to have to pay and they're going to leave. No different than anywhere going to that parking structure, no matter what it is. Even if you go to the library, you got to do the same thing.
Right. Anybody driving to the cafe, that's what they would do.
Right. Unless you walk.
Unless you walk, or if you're an internal user.
Right. Okay. Kenneth Baker.
Mr. Chairman,
your name for the record, please?
Yes, my name is Kenneth Baker. I'm the associate pastor at Glendale Presbyterian Church. Mr. Chairman, members of the agency, city staff, I rise to also address the parking exception and a concern that I have about how that relates to traffic in the area. First of all, I'd like to commend city officials for considering the 90-minute free period for parking in the Maryland garage. I would hope that that would be approved. But one of the concerns that I continue to have, we've addressed it in previous hearings, is the possibility of people bypassing the garage parking or not always being able to find it if they are not familiar with the neighborhood and the layout of the building vis-a-vis the parking garage. I have no doubt that the members of the society will respond to that need by parking there, but the use of the multi-purpose room, particularly for larger groups, suggests that there may well be people from out of the community, out of the area, who may come for various events. At one previous hearing, it was suggested, I don't know if it's still under consideration, of placing a valet parking stand in the alley between Maryland and Louise, where people could drop off their cars and enter the facility. I don't know about you, but driving down an alley possibly after dark in a community where one does not live doesn't seem to me to be a natural reaction or response. My belief is that folks will more likely remain looking for parking. If they do not immediately find the garage, turn to city street parking. That would leave a certain amount of traffic, possibly a large amount, coming to Louise Street, where both the church and the society building will be located. Last week, I exited a church meeting, which concluded at about 9 o'clock. I left the property at 9:15. I found that I had to wait for 67 seconds before I could get across the street at 9:15 for all of the traffic going up and down Louise Street. That doesn't seem like a long amount of time, but if you think about it, when you begin to get impatient after 3 or 4 seconds waiting for a web page to load, to wait for over a minute to find a break in traffic to get across the street is really quite a long time at that hour of the night. Our concern is that, at least mine is that, we have tried to be good neighbors to folks in the community, in the neighborhood, the downtown area, about using the church parking facility. We have restrictions. We have signs up in our approximately 60-lot parking lot, 60-space parking lot, but we try not to be too hard-nosed about it. We try to accommodate community needs. One of the concerns that I have is, in addition to the society building coming in, as you know, there's a residential development at the end of that block. There's another major one being constructed about a block away, and there will be, I believe, of necessity, some extra parking associated with those. If the remaining parking spaces, because of all these new uses, are eliminated along the streets of the neighborhood, we may find ourselves as a church having to control our lot in some way. It's not something we've wanted to do, but we may find that that becomes a necessity in years to come, and that would too add an extra parking burden on the streets of the neighborhood around us. So I'm just extremely concerned about the assumption that at peak times over 200 people will just naturally turn to the Maryland Garage for their parking needs. I think human nature suggests we take the path of least resistance. We do what we may know about. If we don't know where to go, we may end up right in the same neighborhood competing with many other people who are already there. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you very much. Nice to see you again, Pastor. Margaret Hammond.
Good afternoon, Chairman of the Redevelopment, members, staff, and the audience. My name is Margaret Hammond. And
Margaret, is this EIR or parking exception?
Oh, I don't know. I guess it's parking mostly.
Okay, thank you.
There's other issues, but the parking, I think, is the most horrendous at this time. You know, let's get this straight. The church needs more parking, and they wanted to purchase the subject property for a parking. And we're never notified it was available, and it was more or less sold out from under them without any notice, which isn't fair. They've been a member of this city, the church, for probably almost 100 years. Anyway, that's another point. The library is short of parking. And the parking, people that go to the library are permitted to use that same lot parking structure. It can be verified. And then we have the banquet halls. The Brandview, they're on the corner of Harvard and Brand. Where do they park? They have no lot, right? Okay, where do they park? I know where they park. I mean, I'm there. I watch them all the time. It's part of my looking at what's happening. They park on the street. They have valet parking. They park on the street. They park anywhere they can. They use lots that belong to, like the Chamber of Commerce, the Assistance League. That's where their valets park their cars, and on the streets. Hello? And then the Royal Palace. It has no parking. Hello, again. They were contracted to use the library parking. Now, there isn't enough parking for the library patrons, but you're allowing the Royal Palace to have their valets park at the library. There's something wrong here. If we're all using the one space, we're going to run out of. I mean, hello, we're at loggerheads right now. Then you've got the Social Security building that is at the corner of Louise and Broadway. And they're supposed to have 270 some parking places. They have no parking, so they're going to be permitted to use the parking structure. Wow. We're getting up there. And the condos that are being built at the end of the street and the retail. If I recall, I was here through some of the discussions on that. They were allowed exceptions and variances. They don't really have enough parking for their uses. So where are some of those overload people or visitors or whatever? Where are they going to park? Now, what I would like to have seen was a map of that area showing all these businesses that need all this parking that don't have any on lot parking, showing where those cars are going to park. Not just deal with one little issue here. This is a totally huge issue in that area. Maybe you don't think so. You wait. You're going to see, you talk about rats in a congested cage. You know what's going to happen when rats get too packed in? They start eating each other. And that's just what's going to happen. You're going to have so much trouble in that area with the parking situations. It's not funny. It's not a joke. I'm telling you, you can see it.
I just want to tell you, I don't taste very good.
Well, neither do I. You probably have too much fat on me. But anyway, that's beside the point.
And I'm full of cholesterol, too, so you don't want to eat me.
But I'm telling you, you guys have not thought this out about the surrounding overall situation. Those guys at the valet park any darn place they can put a car. And are they going to end up being in those parking structures, too? You know, this is crazy. You really should. This needed to be thought out. And you promised the ASLA 270 places. That was part of the deal. I mean, they received approximately $11 million deal. And the piece of property that they got was worth maybe $1.25 million over there on Brand. And it ended up $11 million deal with all the extras that were put in, including the 270 or 300 spaces that they were guaranteed in that parking structure. I saw the contract. I have the contract, the original one. So, I mean, I'm not just talking air. I mean, I saw it. I went over and got it from the office over there when it was all going on. And you know I was here on it all. So I'm not just saying, but I can't believe how all you can promise. It's just like promising one person a room. Oh, yeah, you can rent the room for a week. Yeah, well, okay, that you can rent the room for a week. Oh, I forgot to tell you, there's already somebody staying there. Well, you have to share a bed or 2 beds or 3 beds or sleep on the floor. That's about the way it's coming down. It really is. And so that's my take on it. And of course, my big beef was that there was never any appraisal on that building on Brand Boulevard. There was never an official appraisal done on it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Lanzafame, when we did the mobility study and we spent gazillion dollars, was all of these projects included in that study?
The mobility plan itself didn't necessarily look at each project in relation to where it is.
No. But did they looked at all of these things?
Yes.
The parking parts?
The study that you have that we just looked at considers all of those uses. The library, the DPSS building, the spaces that you recently put in.
Everything on this list?
That chart there, Table B.
They looked at all of this?
That looks at all of those potential uses, including the reoccupancy of linens and things at the marketplace.
Thank you. Herbert Milano.
Good afternoon, members of the Redevelopment Agency and city staff. My name is Herbert Molano. I wish that I had a large rendering of this same document that the planning used for many of our downtown-specific plan meetings. I requested it several times, and I was told that I could not have one. So this is all I have with me. But if I had one, I would basically use that as a way of explaining the type of issues that we face within the whole area. The downtown-specific plan was or is supposed to give us a holistic approach to all of the issues with regard to 220 acres. which includes 3 churches, it includes banquet halls, it includes the use of the park. And to my chagrin, and especially as I think about it now, I don't remember the religious communities being included actively. I remember all the developers, a whole bunch of them out there meeting after meeting, but I don't remember that if we really extended an invitation to all of the religious groups with regard to how the downtown specific plan would impact them. Maybe they were there, but I couldn't recognize any. The main objective was to take a look at all the issues having to do with traffic and parking, and the look of the whole environment. But I still say that we seem to be paying attention on this issue parcel by parcel. And then we are surprised to find that communities now have to clash because the whole environment wasn't really looked at comprehensively. That we did not do our real, true due diligence of being inclusive and bringing in people. I've seen this so many times when we say, well, we gave 3 calls and nobody answered. And then we're surprised that when the project is at the deadline, all of a sudden, there's momentum and a whole bunch of people come here at the last minute. And you've seen it here time and time again. It's not that they didn't care, it's that we did not reach out effectively to make sure that they are included in the process. And communities need to be included in the process actively. No private organization in marketing could ever succeed. You come in and have a seminar and 3 people show up and say, oh, well, that's okay. We failed at it. I guess nobody wants to buy our product. We don't accept it. We go out and reach and bring the individuals in. I have belonged to this congregation. My children used to participate in the middle of the week to a program that was called the MAD program, Make a Difference, taking our youth and doing something significant with their time and involve them in music and other activities. And we have, an Armenian society that is also doing the same thing. To my feeling, it's a shameful situation to find 2 worthwhile organizations coming to a confrontation because I feel that we did not do a good enough job of really making it inclusive. Now, the Glendale Presbyterian Church has other properties, and there are other properties surrounding the park all around Louise and along Harvard. So many opportunities for us to take a look at the whole area. And I guess my suggestion is that if we're really going to enliven this place to something that is livable with cultural venues and all, that we really should stop and take a look at all of this area in Harvard and Louise and the properties that are there, because I think that there are still opportunities. Now, I know that the Armenian Society has waited for a very long time to get going with this process. But I think that there are opportunities to even make it better. I am just unfortunate that as soon as you get attorneys involved, as you well know, things come to a halt and then frustration sets in. But I look at all these opportunities in this area, and it's just a shame that we're not really addressing it to make the whole environment better for the church and better for the society. If I had my wish, would be that we'd really take a look at it and really bring everybody together now that they're here and come up with a win-win solution that I think is possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Craig Hall.
My name is Craig Hall, pastor at Glendale Presbyterian. Thank you, council members and staff, for the opportunity to speak to this. Appreciate that.
You have listed impact reports. So I'm assuming you are talking about the EIR.
Right. We were here at a meeting in August with members of the ASLA board, their attorney, city staff, 2 members of council, and an opportunity to share our concerns, some of which have been already brought forward again to you. At the end of that meeting, we were told that there would be a study. There would be an impact study with regard to environment, with regard to traffic, and so on. And what we've received is basically a report that says there is no impact. And I think that for myself, I'm a little disappointed. I thought there might be a little more engagement. I think there was an opportunity. It's been noted that there was no complaint received within the time allotted. And I'll simply refer to the famous paragraph that's already been noted at the bottom of page 1. about the use of the main room. It appeared from that the concerns we'd brought up in August and before that had been addressed. And I think we were all delighted to read that, although the parking issues addressed at the back suggested that there was a need for parking for events that weren't going to exist. That was confusing. We have not seen the mysterious errata. So it's a strange thing to have a 30-day period for response and consideration and then not be given something that seems fairly critical to our concerns and interests. So that's unfortunate. My response to what I did see was that, well, thank God, it's too bad, of course, that in this report the impact either upon the church by this project or upon this project by the church seems not to have mattered. I'm used to reading these things. I think that often they're written by people, and perhaps I'm entirely wrong in this case, but who have no sense of what an urban church is about. An urban church is a 24/7 operation. We typically have 4 congregations, not just one, worshiping in our space. We have services in Arabic, in Russian, 2 congregations that deal in Armenian language services, as well as the English-speaking services. That means that by the time this building is built, given the growth of the congregations we're dealing with now, should that continue, we project from 5 to 6 worship services on a typical Sunday, a Saturday evening worship service, and other events, including children's and family activities on Friday evenings. So again, when we read that wonderful paragraph on page 1 without the errata, it seemed to make sense that somehow this organization, our organization, wouldn't be attempting to deal with the same precious space in terms of traffic and parking. We're already impacted by the fact that we have a number of banquet halls in our area. Certainly our Friday and Saturday night programs are impacted in terms of parking. There was a mention of where do these people park? Well, they often try to use our parking lot. Louise is a very busy street, and often the traffic is very speedy. I think it's unfortunate that there was never an opportunity in the way in which this was done for the city, for the church, for people from the Armenian Society of Los Angeles, for other concerned neighbors, to actually sit down. If you look at the map, simply the air picture, on which I guess would be page 5, though it's not numbered, you look at that and say creative people could come to the table around this amount of space and come up with some interesting solutions to the desired use they all have. Sadly, that's not happened. There's no indication that it's going to happen, and I think that's unfortunate. Those are our concerns in terms of the plan. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Peter Harris. Your name for the record, and please let me know if you are addressing the neg deck or the traffic exception.
And my name is Peter Harris. I'm an attorney here on behalf of Glendale Presbyterian Church, and I am addressing the environmental report.
Okay. Thank you.
And the resolution, whether or not to accept the negative declaration, in my opinion, should be denied. I think there should be an environmental impact report. If there is substantial evidence that the project may have significant environmental effect, then the agency must prepare an environmental impact report. A strong presumption in favor of requiring an environmental impact report is built into the California Environmental Quality Act. In fact, the test is called the Fair Argument Standard. And if you look at the Fair Argument Standard, the whole idea is that as I indicated, there's a strong presumption in favor of going forward with an environmental impact report. The Fair Argument standard provides that the agency must prepare an environmental impact report whenever substantial evidence in the record supports a fair argument that the project will have a significant effect on the environment. And here we're talking about a project in a heavily congested area. And it seems as though almost any project of this nature would have significant impacts. And the idea that there are no significant impacts seems to be counterintuitive to what's going on here. With regard to the crucial issue of traffic impacts, the proposed negative declaration assumes that the multipurpose room, apparently assumes that the multipurpose room will only be used on Friday nights. It doesn't seem to take into account the fact that it might be used on all weeknights, or that it might be used on the weekends too. Thus, it is assumed that this feature, with a capacity of 300 to 350 persons, will have no impact whatsoever on approximately 300 days out of the year. There was no anticipated use or trip generation rates for the multipurpose room for 300 days of the year. This is a key assumption which dramatically limits the scope of the traffic impacts. It seems to me like instead of taking the best case analysis, it would have been better to take the worst case analysis. If, for example, using the same criteria in the traffic study, it were assumed that the multipurpose room would be used 5 nights per week, not 500, 5 nights per week, then that is another 680 trips per day, or another 204,000 trips per year. Okay? And I think it does, I think you have to take that into account. And I think that, as previous speakers have indicated, there are also parking impacts. And it seems to me that some of these things must rise to the level of significant impact. That's my presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Liz, dealing with traffic. Yeah, the gentleman raised some issues about traffic. You have heard some of the issues that has been raised about traffic, since you're the traffic consultant that worked preparing this item. Could you address some of those? Hold on.
No response.
Okay, well, okay, sorry about that.
So why don't you finish the
Okay. Impact science. So you want me to keep all the consultants toward the end? You're asking for?
Mr. Chair, members, I would
But I could deal
recommend
with
that,
that?
and then we can respond to.
Okay.
We're keeping careful track of notes. Exactly.
Okay. Okay. Let me go then to Leona Torosian. You're a consultant? Never mind. I'm just kidding. Your name for the record, please.
Leona Torosian.
Okay.
Thank you. Dear Mayor Weaver and members of the City Council and City Manager, hello, my name is Leona Torosian, and I'm a member of and a student of the Armenian Society of Los Angeles' Saturday Armenian School program. I have been a member and have attended Saturday school classes at the Armenian Society of Los Angeles for about 4 years now. I am here to tell you that it is important to let Armenian Society of Los Angeles have their new building constructed because we attend Saturday school there. Ever since we moved out of our original building on Brown due to the new construction, we haven't had a permanent location to attend classes, or haven't had a good classroom to learn in. Our original building did have all the things we needed to learn our Armenian language, learn about the Christian religion, and get help in all of our subjects at school. This new building will be a permanent home for our classrooms. These classes are important and we receive a good education. Some of our schools do not offer the programs for learning our Armenian language or learning about our Christian faith, like these Saturday classes have. They are very helpful and important to our future to be good citizens of the community and learn about our culture, religion, and heritage. Our organization is a place for all of us to come together and learn about our language and history. It is a place that welcomes everyone, and it is important for our Armenian culture to have a place for all ages to come together to learn and be proud of who we are. These Saturday classes are open to everyone who wants to learn Armenian and about Armenian faith and culture and not forget the language of our ancestors. With the new building, more classes can be offered and at higher levels too. From all of us who attend the Saturday School at Armenian Society of Los Angeles, we thank you for your time and hope that the Glendale City Council approves the plans for this project so all of the Saturday students can have a permanent place to learn. Thank you again.
Which grade are you?
Third.
Third grade. Bravo. I want to thank our school board members for preparing our students so greatly. I mean, this is fantastic. Albert Abkarian.
Member of the agency, Mr. Mayor. My name is Albert Abkarian. It's a tough act to follow, but I'll try to do the best I can. I just wanted to, first of all, I'm not addressing the environmental issue and all that. I think you have that issue in front of you. I want to actually clarify a few statements that were made so we all understand what has happened in the past 6 months between the Armenian Society and the Presbyterian Church.
Could you please explain to the audience at what position you are?
I'm the legal counsel, member of the Armenian Society, Glendale resident since 1978. So all of that.
But you're acting as their
I'm
legal
acting
counsel.
as the legal counsel and a member of the Armenian Society. As the Pastor Hall mentioned, we did meet with them in August as with the city manager, and we want to thank the city manager for setting that up. It was a great idea. We had, I think the meetings were very cordial, very nice. In August, I think one thing that was missed, though, in August meeting, we were promised 30 or 40 questions that the society had to meet, including that they wanted tax returns for the past 5 or 6 years from us. We agreed to meet with them again, and we met on October 25th, again with the city manager and the city staff, putting that meeting together. There was a second meeting.
Were any council members present at the second meeting?
No.
And just for the record, did I stay during the first meeting?
No.
I had to leave. I said hello and I left?
Yes.
Thank you.
There were no, actually, there was no council members present during any of the long discussions. But the city manager was there, and some of the members of the agency were there. On the second meeting, we had a long conversation, and I just heard one of the speakers say that we actually had agreed on a lot of issues. We agreed on no issues. What we asked again was, there were a lot of issues that were just told to us that they had issues with, people had issues with in the church, and we asked again, please do us a favor. Give us 30 or 40 questions, however many questions you might have. We'll be more than happy to go on a 10-hour, 2-day session. Sit down and try to hammer any issues we might have with the Presbyterian Church. We made that very clear. I think the city manager could tell you that that's exactly what we asked for. We were promised questions within 30 days on October 25th. Pastor Hall then went downstairs and promised me again that they would give us questions within 30 days. And we will answer them, and then we'll have a 2-day session to hammer out any differences we might have. Neither Armenian Society nor me nor anyone from our organization ever received any questions from October 25th on, never received any phone calls. Then I contacted Pastor Jambazian and a few of the Armenian congregation members that were with the church, and I was told that they're no longer with the church, and a lot of Armenian congregation has left. And I was told that to talk to other people. And then I think I've contacted the agency and I said, when are we going to get the questions? We do want to resolve some of these issues. There were issues that probably could have been resolved. And we were told that when the agency receives it and when we are given, we will be given the questions. We have never, ever have received a single comment from Presbyterian Church, any of its members, its attorney, or anyone else about any of our requests to try to sit down and discuss this issue. We have done this for the past 7 to 8 months, and not even once have they responded. Actually, I think to slap to our face, we actually asked them, please, and they even know. I said, forget being attorneys. We'll roll up we'll have a T-shirt and jeans, and we'll go on a 2-day session and resolve this issue. And we didn't receive anything. On Thursday, there were no comments. On Friday, there were no comments. And I want to go back. Is this when we didn't receive any questions, is this a organization or a church that wants to resolve issues or create conflicts? On the comment on Thursday, if they made comments on Thursday in writing, like they should have, last week, we would have had a few days to provide some, maybe even sit down with them and discuss this issue with them. Again, one more time. They never, ever made any comments like they're making here today. Again, is this a church that wants to create, resolve issues or create conflicts? Then the only meeting they had with the city was yesterday at 4:45, where we would have no choice to try to sit down and discuss issues with them. We have done everything we possibly can to try to resolve issues with the church. We have not had any contacts with them whatsoever. We have never agreed to anything with the church. We've said we will be more than happy to sit down and discuss it with them. But how much further could we go? We can't go any further than that. I'm sorry, just one more comment. I'm speaking, there's 60 people who wanted to speak and basically have deferred some of their comments to me, if you don't mind.
Make it quick.
I appreciate it. The only comment that I have is that the Armenian Society of Los Angeles will and can use this facility based on the requirements under the code and based on a full ability of this building to be used the way the code requires us to do it. We will make some concessions, but we want to use this facility the way the code allows us to use it, just like the church uses their facility, just like anyone else, to its fullest possible capacity. Thank you.
Mr. Perry, and since you're here, I want to get some clarification on the errata, as Mr. Starbird asked. The errata basically, on the first paragraph, it says, typical uses of the multi-purpose room would be used during weekday and weekend, evenings only. Could you explain that to me? It's kind of confusing to me. So you're going to use this only during the weekdays on the day, or on the weekends on the evening only?
I think that there's an explanation that our consultant is going to give. I think there might have been a little bit of a confusion between those 2 or 3 paragraphs. The facility will be used based on what we can use the facility for, which would be during the days we will use the facility for very limited purposes. At nights we will have meetings, and on the weekends the facility will be used for meetings and having events and all that. So I think that is going to be clarified by the consultant.
So what I want to understand is, for example, the young lady talked about the fact that she goes to a Sunday school.
We will have
a Saturday school.
Saturday school.
So on Saturday school, that's taking place in the evening, or it's taking place in the morning?
That is a morning activity that we will have.
So they will use it in Saturday morning?
Yes.
And there are some events on Saturday evening. That's what the weekend evening means.
That's right.
Okay. So you're going to use it in the day and at night?
Yes. Limited use during the days, uses at nights, yes. I think that that's why I want to defer to the consultant, so she can and Armic to explain that portion to you a little bit further.
Because that's the only vague part, so I need to have clarified. Okay. Thank you very much. Any question? Mr.
Right. Where did the errata come from? Who prepared that, staff?
Mr. Chairman, members of the agency, the change in the final mitigated neg deck was prepared by the consultant. Staff prepared the errata sheet rather than give you an entire
So
new
the
document.
genesis of page 1 was from staff?
Was from the consultant and the applicant. Staff prepared the errata sheet that summarizes that.
Mayor, we should probably clarify, the consultant works for the Armenian Society of Los Angeles and prepared the environmental
Okay, and then notice that discrepancy that occurred on page 1.
That's correct. That's
And they just noticed it now. We just got this at the beginning of the meeting.
They noticed it, I believe, last night or yesterday, made us aware of it, and then sent us the changed document, and we've modified it for you.
And this draft EIR or whatever, when was that provided to everybody?
That was provided on March 2nd
March
for the
2nd.
20-day review period.
Okay, and it was just caught last night.
Mr. Chair. And members of the agency, again, it's a mitigated negative declaration, not an EIR.
Well, yeah, that's, I know.
And I would note for the record that the errata was provided to show the consistency of the analysis. What's important in terms of the evaluation of the document is whether or not the impacts were analyzed. And the mitigated negative declaration and its attachments analyze the events and describe events that occur during the weekdays and the weekends.
That was my next question.
Yes, and so the point is whether or not those impacts were analyzed on the days indicated, and so it was an unfortunate errata that it did not say weekend as well as weekday. So, the analysis that was completed was done for weekend events as well as weekday events.
Because that was the main concern of the church, I believe, that they thought it was only done for weekdays, but instead it was done for the weekends, even though it didn't say that.
The mitigated negative declaration that was circulated included the analysis for the weekend events and a description of what those events would be, and in that attachment B concerning the parking garage shows an analysis of Saturday, for example.
Mr. Quintero, then Mr. Starbird.
Perhaps one of the other speakers will be better able to answer it, but I'm just curious. In terms of the evening use or weekend evening use, you've got the multi-purpose room at 350 seat capacity, so that could conceivably be used for society function.
Yes.
And
we've never, during every single meeting we've had with the church, we have continuously said we will be using those facilities on the weekends. We will be having events in those facilities. We promise that we will not turn it into a commercial banquet hall,
right,
which is what I agree that we have said.
Then the next floor up has another space at about 1,900 square feet. Could both of those rooms be used on the weekend, or is it going to be pretty much the second floor?
I would say the second floor would be the one. The other would be assembly rooms for other purposes.
For smaller groups at times.
Mrs. Starbird.
I think what I wanted to ask can be pointed out in the responses to the various questions raised, so I'll hold.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Armik Shahnazarian. Your name, please.
I beg for a moment.
Sir, you have already had your piece.
I have indeed. And
sir,
when I came...
Sir, please have a seat.
Right.
Let me go through the process, and if there is time, maybe I will allow you to speak. Please. Armik Shahnazarian.
Good afternoon.
Your name for the record, please.
Mr. Chair, Armik Shahnazarian, representing ASLA ASLA.
Okay, and you're the architect?
I'm a designer of the project.
Designer.
My office is the
okay.
architect on the project.
All right. 5 minutes, please.
I'm here to answer if any questions you have. Me and my associates, we could answer any questions you have. I believe Mr. Ahern described the project.
Okay, any questions as far as the design is concerned? Mr. Weaver.
I just want to get this straight.
Yes, sir.
The cooking will be done on the third floor.
Yes.
Then will it go down by freight elevator?
Yes. It will have
to the
most
second
probably
floor.
a down elevator too coming down.
Because I didn't see how I was going to get down there.
Yeah, that would be
other than the
another
freight
option.
elevator.
That would be one other option that we're exercising.
So you don't know yet?
At this point, no, but there will be most probably down.
Does it seem pretty hard to go through the hallway, through the vestibule, down the steps, through vestibule, around the men's room, and then through the main doors? So the only way I could see you getting down, it had to be the freight elevator.
Yes,
right?
that's one.
Unless you're putting a dumb raider in, which you
we
don't
might
show
put a
you.
dump raider, and that's a good recommendation. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, rear entry, I guess the dashed lines indicate on the first floor that there will be gates that will be locked when the place is not in operation. Anybody entering from the parking lot in the back will come through the rear entry and then through a gate that will take them into the parking area.
Correct.
The idea is to keep anybody else from parking in that area when you're not using it.
That's true.
Okay, a cafeteria, it's not a cafe, it says cafeteria. Will there be signage out front saying public cafeteria?
At this point, we did not discuss about signage to provide a signage on the cafeteria, but most probably there will be a small sign.
Well, because am I right? It is a public.
It is.
It says public cafeteria.
Yes.
So the only way the public's going to know is if there's a sign out there.
Yes.
Saying that it is.
Correct.
Public cafeteria, and you have to work that signage somewhere into the.
Correct.
In the front there. Do you have any idea what kind of hours of operation that cafeteria will be in service?
Most probably it would be roughly from, let's say, 8 o'clock in the morning until 8 o'clock at night. That's my understanding. It would be like a typical retail type operation because we calculated based on the worst scenario as far as the zoning codes are concerned, as far as the parking. So
I was wondering if I'm a neighbor and I want to get a cup of coffee. There's a sign there that says so-and-so's cafeteria, come on in.
You should be able to do that. And I want to bring one more item is that we discussed as far as providing chairs. If it's desirable for the agency members, if we could put portable chairs outside, because we provide from outside an entrance to this space. So if that will meet the requirements as far as the agency, we will provide portable chairs so we could take it in and bring it out.
But you do have an 11 by 25 area inside where you'll have tables.
Yes,
so
I think that would be
eat.
something. And it's close to, there's a fountain next to it.
Okay, and then the multi-surface room, the hydraulic stage will go down into the floor so it's flush when not in operation. Is that the idea?
If you repeat that question.
It says stage with hydraulic lift.
Yes.
So it's to be flush with the floor.
Exactly.
Except when you want to use it, then it'll hydraulically lift.
Exactly.
The other stage, though, will be a permanent fixed stage.
Correct.
Okay. And a wine cooler. I wonder why you need a wine cooler, but it's up to you. Okay, I guess that's all my comments on the design.
Quintero.
When this first appeared in front of us, I was hoping that the cafeteria would actually have facing Isabel instead of fixed windows would actually have sliding or whatever glass doors, so to speak, so that people could eat or drink not only inside the cafeteria but outside also. So I'm sorry that didn't work its way into, because I think that would make it very attractive. The same thing, people could sit there and relax before they leave the society premise. But anyway, I do hope that with that side entrance to the proposed cafeteria that you do somehow manage to work in some portable chairs or little tables or something to give it an outdoor. That street is a very nice street, and in the late afternoons in the summers, it's going to be a nice place to be outside. You're not going to have to be inside, so I hope you...
We'll incorporate that with, I believe we provide a landscape plan. Mm-hmm. The landscape plan shows a tremendous amount of trees over there in that area. So I was wondering if we could maintain the same landscaping and then provide portable chairs. That would be
a very good idea.
One additional comment. Taking Mr. Quintero's thought, if you did have an entrance from there, you could possibly close the door inside, providing better security.
Yes.
Cafeteria would only serve those coming from the outside for that purpose.
That's what the intention was.
That's why we have a door already.
No, but you have to
You
go
close-
inside the main doors to get to it.
No.
Oh, I'm sorry. Blinders. My fault.
Yeah, we provided the restrooms too, so in case the
Yeah, I
doors
saw
are
that.
closed.
Missed the door.
And then one more question. Then the balcony facing the front on the third floor, is that actually active? Can people stand out there? Is that?
Yes.
It is.
It is active.
So you've got the one in the back towards the alley.
And one at the front.
And then one at the top. The one in the alley is on the second floor.
No, both of them are on the third floor.
Oh, both on. Oh, that's right. You're right. Yeah, both are on the third floor. Very good. That's a very good idea. And then that third floor room, the 1,900 square feet. Then next to it is 1,200 square foot designated as office. This is on the third floor.
Correct.
Is that a permanent wall, or is that a between those two large?
Between those two, I believe the association wanted to have these places if they want to rent it as an office space.
So they're permanent walls.
Any other questions?
Just one. You already looked, the turning radius into the driveway is okay?
Yes.
20-foot driveway into a
Traffic
20-foot, just looks when they're come around that, okay, I saw the thumbs up. Go around that corner, hoping the cars wouldn't start clipping the corner.
What we've done is we set back the building 3 more feet, additional 3 feet to accommodate that turnaround.
That's true. Well, we'll see. I'd armor plate it, though.
If there was ever a need for valet parking, how would you handle that? Would that be
Close the inside.
front or?
We have done, it depends on the valet. If the board desires, we could have it at the front and at the back. They could park at the front and then they could pick up their car from the back, so in case if somebody doesn't want to go through the alley to park. But we accommodate, if you take a look at the plans on sheet A2, we do have a parking attendant space. And then we have a rear entry area, so people could wait until the parking attendant could provide them a cars.
Valet in the back. When it's raining, they're protected. When it's hot, it's protected.
Yes. So
Just valet in the back. Queue it up in the alley lane.
Yeah, but the alley, since we have I think the city is going to provide a door from the parking structure to this location.
Right.
So we believe that majority of the people would use the parking structure rather than valet service. But in case
if they did, I'd rather see valet from the back rather than putting even more traffic out on Louise.
But in some events, it's practical for the people to come at the front and park it, and then they can pick up their cars from the back. So that way they would not create any problems.
Well, I don't see that, but just trying to cut the traffic down on Louise.
Mr. Weaver, where do you see the wine cooler?
It's on second floor.
Walk-in cooler.
Wait, excuse me. Third floor on the east side of the cooking area.
The W line.
Yeah.
Is that
What
a
are you
wine?
putting in a walk-in
On the
cooler?
third floor in the kitchen? What is that WI cooler?
That's
mean?
walk-in cooler for
Walk-in cooler.
Walk-in cooler, yes.
So it's like a big, huge refrigerator.
Yes.
You walk in
Yes.
and you put your.
Oh, that's where the meats and
Meats and
everything.
stuff like that.
Why didn't you just tell me that?
I
thought it was a wine cooler.
I'm going. This is a huge wine cooler. If this is a
Damn,
wine
okay.
cooler, my
Oops.
God.
Yeah, well,
It's
a lot of wine in there.
walk-in cooler. Okay.
Champagne. Okay, that's for the meats, the vegetables, everything to keep them. Oh, okay.
Okay.
Good clarification too.
I was wondering. God, this is a huge one. As far as the seating is concerned, is there a way to increase those little short retaining walls up, and so turn it into a bench so people can sit
We could
there
do
and
that.
wait to be picked up? Or
We could do that if you permit me with the help of Mr. Loomis. We could design something and help of the landscape architect. We could come up with something that I believe will please the agency and
Okay.
Oh, I do have one more comment.
Yes, sir.
So I understand the distance on the north side of the building to the next building, the garage, is 12 to 18 inches.
18 inches, yes.
Okay. You know stuff is going to get in there. How are you going to clean it?
Well,
You got some skinny little kids that are going to go in there?
Yeah, the purpose for that was we did that mainly to create, as you know, it's a brick building next door.
Yeah.
So when we start digging, we don't want to create any vibration for the next door brick
But
building.
you're going to have an 18-inch gap.
I'm going to have an 18-inch gap, but that's
How are you gonna
unfortunate. But we're
how are you
gonna
going to clean
We're
it?
going to end up having somebody somehow with some sort of a tool to clean that up. We are going to have an
134 feet long?
Well, we could do it. I mean, they could provide, I believe, long brushes or something to.
We don't need code enforcement with somebody saying there's a trashy area with everything dumped
And then
in there.
the second item is
I can access through
the molding that is projecting outside. I cannot encroach into other property, so I have to have.
Understand all that. I just thought of the maintenance issue.
I understand.
And is it going to be concrete?
It's going to be a concrete block building.
No, base.
The base.
18 inches of concrete paved?
Yes, it will be concrete.
And on the south side?
And on the south side, we're lucky because we have the church structure, which is less than 120 or 150.
So you've got room to get in there?
We got room to get in, but again, it's something that we have to negotiate with our neighbors, and if they allow us, we could put a sheet metal, try to close that gap somehow on the concrete block building side.
On the north side?
Yes.
You better find some way to keep trash from being dumped in there. Okay.
All right. Any other issues
Any
with the
questions
design?
as far as the environmental?
Okay. I have some issues with the design. First of all, material board.
I believe.
Okay. All you have is this.
Usually.
Okay. Next time, I'd like to see the actual material board.
Okay.
Also, the colors. It basically says colors based on that drawing, and also the other one. There is no. You haven't called out what the paints are. That's and the reason I'm sensitive to that because we're building an affordable housing, and the previous architect to that one did not call it out, and the staff has been going back and forth as far as which color is the closest to the actual drawing, and it's taken a lot of time. So it is prudent for you before you pull the permit to get together with Mr. Loomis and agree on a color chip, and both of you sign off on it, so the poor contractor at a job site doesn't sit there and go, which color do you want? And it's this one, not that one. So make sure that that is taken care of. And also, I'm assuming the bottom section, it's all precast.
Correct.
Okay, so that's all precast down below. And, okay. Those are and the fountains are already prefab fountains.
Correct. They're by Coronado Stone.
You're going to light them on the inside, the bowl part,
it's possible.
or the water just going to drop into.
This water, we can light it up.
There needs to be some type of a lighting at nighttime, so at least it gives it some. Because at night you're not going to see the waterfall. With the exception of those two items, I think the rest is fine. I don't have a problem with that. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, I am all done, Mrs. City Attorney, with the exception of the consultants. Do you want me to call them up? How do you want me to handle this?
To questions? I want to ask a question of staff.
Mr. Chair, members of the agency, you may want to consider taking a very short recess for the purposes of determining the order.
Do you want me to deal with the consultants so they could address some of the issues?
No, that'll come back.
Let us take about a 10-minute recess.
So do you want to take the consultants?
Yes. After the recess.
After the recess. Response to comments.
So they can essentially they can respond.
Okay. Before I go there, I'm going to deal with one other person, which is very unusual, but I will do that so they won't say that I didn't, because I asked him, and he was very nice, and he sat down.
See if I could ask a question.
And I think I gave the card back. Craig Hall.
I wanted to ask staff a question first, but.
Thank you. I very, very much appreciate the opportunity to say something. I was temporarily out of the room, came back in, and heard the attorney for the ASLA characterizing the church in a certain way. That hasn't been our manner in terms of our sense of the ASLA or their people or their staff. I don't think any of us, I can't imagine you as city leaders, want those kinds of attitudes promoted or in some way. expressed within the workings of the city, and certainly to prejudice decisions. We're not looking for confrontation, and I think I and others made it clear we would like to work out a creative solution that works for everybody. It was suggested that there had been attempts to be in relationship with us over 6 months. I just simply need to say that isn't true. We ended the August meeting. We gave to the attorney for the ASLA and their board members a list of our activities for the week. We requested the same from them. Several months later, I received a phone message from him indicating it was coming, be patient. Sometime later, a very sketchy report was received. We were never invited to be in discussion. We certainly would have responded enthusiastically and eagerly had there been any interest in having those discussions. I simply wanted to say that because I think I would want to make sure you understood our attitude and our behavior. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, at this time, we're going to take a 10-minute recess. At this time, we'll take a 10-minute recess. We'll be back in 10 minutes. Okay, we're back from the recess, and I'm going to turn over to Ms. Van Meiden. So, what do we do next?
Yes, Mr. Chair, members of the agency, we've had an opportunity to meet with the consultants, and a number of issues were discussed, and they relate essentially to the adequacy of the project description, and believe the council, Mr. Abkarian, for the applicant wants to make a statement concerning the project description to the
Thank you.
to the
Mr. Abkarian.
Members of the agency, Mr. Mayor, we have had a discussion with the city, and we've had a discussion with our board. According to those discussions, the board has decided that what we would like to do is, instead of having a errata that was given the night before, actually have another package recirculated as of, I'm assuming that would probably be done by Monday. As far as we're concerned, even with the changes on the errata, with all the other documentation, there won't be any environmental impact whatsoever again on that project. However, just to be complete and make sure that there are no, so to speak, challenges, we want to make sure that it's as airtight as you possibly could get it. So we would like to go ahead and recirculate that as of sometime next week, and then 20 days will pass, and then we'll bring it up for a vote at that point.
Okay. Will there be any meetings in between then?
Meanwhile, we will entertain, as we have in the past 6 months, any kind of a meeting or a recommendation by the church to meet with our board, to discuss any issues that
questions.
And hopefully we will get the questions that were promised to us in our last meeting.
I'd like to request, since there's questions and all this has been going on, to keep council appraised or the agency appraised.
We are going to actually to make sure that this is as airtight as it possibly could get, and there's no miscommunication, which I didn't think there was. We are going to ask the agency and the city for some assistance in setting up some of those meetings. So this way there will not be any confusions, missed statements, and I would ask some of the agency members, or actually not members, but some of the staff, and for maybe even the city manager to be present in some of those meetings.
So there's no he said, she said kind of stuff going on?
There shouldn't have been, but I hope that there won't be again.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
I'd like to talk to the council from the church. Would the council from church come up?
He means the lawyer.
Yes, the lawyer.
Yeah, I thought he wanted to talk to us.
The lawyer.
The lawyer.
Yes. My question is, do you have any issues with that? Would your organization be willing to meet with the other organization for, let's say, resolving some issues?
Yes, they would.
They're fine with that?
Yes.
Okay, and
They
how
indicated to
soon?
me that they would do
how
that
soon
before
would
they
they
left.
be able to accommodate this? Since this is going to be recirculated for 20 days, would you be able to meet, let's say, within a week?
I believe so.
Sometime
I have to
next
confirm
week?
that with them, but I'll try to set it up.
Okay,
yes.
because if there are issues, I'd like to get these things resolved as soon as possible. I don't want to have a meeting on the 19th day.
I understand.
And then they say, there's all this other stuff. So if there are issues that need to be resolved, the sooner the better you might meet, the better it is. So all the issues are resolved as the process is going through that 20-day, so we're done.
Okay.
Okay?
Councilman,
Thank you.
May I make a suggestion as two attorneys? May I make a suggestion that no attorneys be present?
That's a good
And
suggestion.
the parties actually
That
meet
leaves you out
together
too.
with the help of the city to discuss some of the issues aside from the legal issues. And then if there are legal issues, we would meet a second time and have the attorneys present to
That's the
discuss
first
it.
time I've heard.
That's a
That's the first time I've heard an attorney says, "I don't want to make any money."
Get this
Wow.
Ah, it's going to save people a lot of money.
I'm not in a position to agree with that, but I'll certainly suggest it to my clients.
Okay. Okay.
If I'm there, can I have my attorney?
Well,
Yes, you do. You have your city.
No attorneys means no attorneys.
I would also like it to be the two nonprofits and the staff without council members involved. I don't think we need to have any council members.
We won't.
That's what
We
I
won't
said.
be there. But you want their attorneys present or not?
No, leave the attorneys out.
Not unless,
resolve whatever they.
not unless at the
Lock-
end they have to draw up documents. But
Put 'em
Okay,
in.
so you want them to meet without attorneys?
That's right.
Okay.
Lock the door. and-
Mr. Attorney.
Okay, I'm not exactly sure what this proposal is. Now, can we move forward on the parking issue tonight?
Well,
Why?
no.
We cannot, the environmental
deck.
needs to be
Environmental.
certified
Gotta do
before
that
you can
first.
take any action on any of the other entitlements.
So this evening, we really would be taking these matters off calendar.
It would be taken off calendar for purposes of noticing and recirculating the MND, and it would be brought back to you just as the package is right now in the same order.
Do you need a motion
No.
to notify?
No, but wait a minute.
Sorry.
Now, all the testimony and the issues that were raised today, are those wiped off the table on this new circulation, or do they remain part of the record that do not need to be restated at the time of the new circulation?
They will need to be, if there are still issues with respect to the project at the time that it comes back to you, it will be renoticed and recirculated for public comment on that revised document. So to the extent that their comments have been made today on this document that are
They're wiped
potentially applicable on the newly circulated document, those would need to be restated.
Well, okay, I'm not happy about that. I think we brought many people here. Many people have come to give their opinion, and I'm not sure why we're going in the direction we are, but it seems like a large waste of time.
They've all agreed to it.
I guess, Mr. Najarian, I guess what the ASLA is trying to do is it's trying to give opportunity to the church to resolve their issues. I think they're being good neighbors. I don't think we should stand in their ways. In the end of the day, after the building is done, they still have to be coexisting together. So I think the sooner they resolve their issues, the better it is for both parties, number one. Number two, as far as I'm concerned, I do not like to take it off the table. I like to continue this matter for the next 30 days. That will give you plenty of time for your 20-day, but it will make sure that they don't sit there and not process this. I don't want this thing to become another issue that it just sits there forever. I mean, we've been dealing with this thing for a long, long time. All these members are waiting for a place to go. So I don't know if you guys are okay with that or not.
Well, that's subject to them having the or
I
the
go with-
document
I go with
prepared by
staff.
Monday or
Take
next
it off
week.
Yeah, but if
calendar.
it's not ready, that at least there's a placeholder. It will be on the agenda, and you can come back and say they're not ready.
But
But at
part of
least
it's-
there is something there.
Part of it will be driven by the public notice requirement.
Needs to be renoted.
And when that notice gets published, so that starts the 20-day clock running. So if we don't get that notice published, if the parties don't get that notice published in the appropriate time frame, again, there's a whole host of, in fact, the phrase you
Let it go.
were discussing is the
Off
domino
calendar.
effect.
Okay.
Things begin to
Say
start
no
to
more.
fall in domino.
I got it. There's CEQA issues.
Off calendar.
But here's my point. It's not just between the Glendale Presbyterian Church and the ASLA. For example, Mr. Milano came and spoke, expressed some objections. Are we inviting him to those meetings? Otherwise, he certainly reserves his right to make the same objections at that time. Is he invited to those meetings?
Well, is he invited to the meeting between the church and the ASLA? I think that's between the ASLA and the church.
Right. And the point of that meeting is to
Mr. Abkarian said no.
is to alleviate the issues, the environmental issues that are before us,
That's
or
not-
is this just neighborly cooperation?
I would
That's why I'm confused.
classify it as the latter, with the potential for overlap into some of those environmental issues, but everyone still reserves their opportunity to comment on the recirculated MND.
How about Margaret Hammond? No.
Margaret Hammond reserves her right to. Yes, she
She
reserves
can
her
come
right.
back. But
She's
not
not invited
part
in.
of the
No.
the meeting between the two parties.
My understanding is that meeting is between the church and ASLA representatives to work out issues between the two of them.
Not
It's
the
up to
general
them who
public.
they would like to have in those meetings.
We're not in there either.
There may be some overlap in the environmental, but it still does not affect the right of any other party to comment on the environmental document as recirculated.
I just have a little problem with this. Let's say the church then would withdraw one of the objections that they've raised, the concerns that they've raised. Would that preclude Margaret Hammond or Herbert Milano from raising the same objection?
It does not.
And where would that put us at that point? Why would that be in any better situation 30 days from now than we are today?
We believe we're going to have a better document then.
Okay. So it relates to the documents primarily. Okay.
Mr. Quintero.
Well, for me, the sooner the better. I hope the parties meet and come to some type of agreement so we can make the decision. The Armenian Society of LA has been bouncing around for years. They're in a location that doesn't particularly work for them. They're having to have different functions and all over Glendale. So I just hope we make a quick decision and let's have it back in front of us and let's go ahead and finish it off. It's been a long time.
The current document is at a point that we cannot move this along.
I think Mr. Abkarian gave his client good advice. He presented it here to you that it's in the best interest of the parties to have this document recirculated.
Okay.
Renoticed and recirculated so that, as he indicated, it can be bulletproofed and the best disclosure document that you can have before you, consistent with CEQA.
All right. Do I hear a motion?
Do you need a motion? Take it off calendar?
Yeah.
We can have one.
So, second.
There's a motion second to move it off calendar. Roll call.
Agency members Manukian?
Yes.
Najarian?
Yes.
Quintero?
Yes.
Weaver?
Aye.
Chairman Yosefian?
Aye. And to the architect, when you come back, please call out all the numbers and do the modification to the seating and all that stuff. Since you have some time, might as well just deal with that issue at the same time. And if there's going to be any signage as far as the cafe or whatever is going to be, please show that on your rendering, Mr. Starbird.
I just want to note, it looks like our target date to bring this back would likely be May 1. That's about 5 weeks, which should
Mr.
be plenty of
Yosefian
time for
also
notice.
wants a color palette.
A color palette?
Well, he's called out. We just need to have.
Materials. Do you
He's
want to
saying
see
the
the
color
actual?
needs to be on that, so we need to have it called out.
That's
What
all?
is it? Is it Don
I
Edwards?
want to see the actual materials. Usually you do.
I want to see the actual material that is not paint. Paints, he can just provide us paint chips and the numbers.
Okay.
So this way, we don't have to worry about what paint to use when staff is not confused either.
We better hurry with a meeting. We're about to have another room full of people in 10 minutes.
All right. And with that, is there a motion to adjourn?
Is there anything else on there?
Any comments?
Second.
Is there a motion to adjourn? There was a motion and a second. Mr. Quintero made a motion. Mr. Manukian seconded it. We are adjourned.
Back in 10 minutes.